Universal design is actually a term that came out from the field of architecture. In architecture, they use universal design as a means for designing buildings and access that's provides accessibility to all. So for example, universal design here would be that there's a ramp that's able to get up to the building. Universal design was not what they used in the library, for example, in the restrooms, where if you were in a wheelchair, you would not be able to reach the washing room. Okay, so part of what we're talking about in universal design is saying that we need to design instruction to meet the needs of all kids. Okay, ideal world, perfect world, right? But let's not think about what we don't have, but let's think about when you're planning instruction, how can we meet most of the learners in our classroom? And I look at it sometimes maybe thinking about, okay, what's a worst case scenario? I have 2 children with autism in my class. I have a child who has a communication disorder, and I have 3 kids that are English language learners, and most of the kids are on level, but not all of them. So you're already thinking about what could be the possible makeup in my classroom. Universal design has 3 principles to it, which basically looks at we're giving equal opportunities for all students to learn. It provides a blueprint for creating instructional goals, methods, and materials and assessments that work for everyone, not just one size fits all. And it's got flexible approaches so that if one student doesn't get it this way, we're going to try to help them get it in a different way, okay? So we look up at the what of learning. What is it that we want children to learn? How do we want them to learn it? And why is this important? I think sometimes we always sit there and say, well, so what? Who cares? Why is this important to me? I was looking at my daughter's pre-cal textbook, and they had like 3 or 4 pages at the beginning that had each chapter and some type of link with real-world applications. I thought, that's pretty good. You know, they're finally making that connection. Why is this important? You might not go into a field that requires pre-calculus, but there were still areas of how they found it made a link to everyday things. And so that's basically what we know, that children, when they make connections to something they know, they're going to be better at it later on. Okay? And it's also important for learning to be interconnected, because what we've done so far and what I see in schools is that we teach reading here, math here, science here, art is over here, but there's no connection between the content of what is being taught. And we also know that the brain makes connections, and if we can link learning to make different connections, then it's going to be more meaningful for kids. So this is universal design, very quickly and in a very broad manner. The website is the udlcenter.org. There's many good resources there that you might want to access. But it's the basic principle of thinking, if I walked into this classroom this morning and this is all I had, this is not a good classroom for us to adjust to learning. Rashmi had to leave because she had her ankle, she cracked, her leg was in a cast, and we didn't have anywhere where she really could put her foot up and things like that. So we would have thought of that maybe a little bit differently, and that's universal design. Thinking about how we're going to set up our classrooms, how we're going to structure the learning environment so that it all comes together. So basically what I wanted for you all to leave with today, we keep talking about a toolbox. Teachers need tools to have access to, to what they want to do with kids. But we want tools that work. And so the way I'm making the connection is that the toolbox that you're building or the strategies that you're developing over time are really best practices. And we talk about best practices out there, but what do best practices mean to you? So like Angela was saying, all the things that you've done and they worked, those are research-based because you have proof that the outcomes that the students got from them, they're research-based for that class. It doesn't mean that they have to be researched some state that we don't have any idea of what the school population is, and all of a sudden some big book producer, publisher purchased it and said, these are the ones we have to use. If you can prove that it works for your students, that's research-based. But the thing again is that you want to make sure you have the evidence to show that it worked, okay? So I'm going to give you some guidelines, okay? Because we do know that there's some things that work better than others, okay? If we know that that sitting in your seat is the only way to, I mean, we know that there's some practices just don't work, okay? Yet we still see them over and over again, right? You walk into some classrooms and you're like, what's going on here? Nothing's happening, right? And so, or teachers fall into certain routines and what worked for one group of students last year might not be what's working for the best for this group, or the dynamics of your students different, you know, or we have rain for 5 days and all of a sudden the kids are all bouncing off the walls, and 2 weeks ago they were able to do something and then they come back, and you know, so we have all these factors that come into play. So we have to be flexible. So what are best practices? They motivate, engage, prompt students to learn and achieve. Students will receive a balanced curriculum and possess the knowledge and skills and abilities to transfer and connect ideas and concepts across disciplines. Will be successful, will be successful as measured by standardized tests and other indicators of student success. Does this mean I use the test as my sole way of teaching? No. I think, and researchers have shown this, is that if we do good things in the classroom, our students are going to achieve on the test. If we only focus on the test, then we haven't gotten very far. And I think, Angela, you made this comment of, you know, a week before the test, we reviewed the test or looked at the format and things like that. But she did not focus her instruction on only the test. So these are the guidelines, okay? Include a balanced curriculum. Okay, so I found this on the North Carolina Public Schools website. And so what I did is that I took it from them, and their website is right up there. Some of the school districts have amazing materials on them, and it's all about doing a search. I just checked, they included included entire standards course of study, which is our TEKS, basically. So it's not just looking at one particular area of the TEKS, it's also looking at other content also, so that you can start integrating it together. We think about the whole child, not just the skills that you want them to learn. Okay, I don't know how those of you who have been in the schools right now, how are teachers addressing the child emotionally, considering their social backgrounds, considering their learning styles? What are some examples that you might have? We do want them to learn English, and we want them to be proficient in English, but we don't only do English only. Okay, and I've heard that more and more, even in bilingual classrooms. My students come back and say, yeah, well, this is what we send home to the parents, and this is what the principal tells us to do. But this is the value of your education. You have access to research, and this is where you go to your administration, and if they start telling you all these things, you say, yeah, but this is what the research is showing me that is best practice. This is what I know is best for kids. And this is what I'm bringing to the table. You are not somebody that's being told what to do. You shouldn't be somebody that's told what to do. You should be telling them, you know, what is it that we know best? You have access to all this information. You know what works for kids, okay? So I'm going to start the video for a segment of it because it fits right into the beginning.